Well, welcome everyone to this session. Thank you a lot for coming along, and a warm welcome to you, Russell, as well. Great to be here with you to discuss
My pleasure.
Yeah, what's let's face it, a very pressing crisis in the world. I want to start with what I think is a terrifying statistic, just to put the crisis in context. The UN says that 1 billion people around the world suffer a mental health issue. So that's 1 in 8. That includes me in that number. I'm sure it includes a number of you in the audience. And it's a terrifying statistic. And I want to say it's really important that we're having this conversation. And I'm excited to hear your insights as well. So to start the conversation, I want to perhaps negatively talk about technology and the complex relationship it has with mental health. It's not necessarily the solution that it purports to be, but it could also be part of the problem. And just to contextualize that, this week we've heard a lot about, for example, the issue of trauma in Ukraine. We heard the First Lady of Ukraine talk very, very eloquently and emotionally about that particular issue. You have things like young people, their mental health, and how that's exacerbated by phone usage and social media and things like that. So do you agree to a certain extent that technology is a double-edged sword when it comes to mental health?
I don't think there's any doubt that technology and just the speed with which technology has evolved has created an environment where we're not evolved as a species to handle all the information that's coming in at us. And we see it in teenagers. We see the sleep patterns have changed over time. Teenagers aren't getting enough sleep. We even have evidence that young women are menstruating earlier because of blue light. Right? We're sort of honing in on that as being a reason that we're seeing earlier menstruation. So there's no doubt that technology has led to some of these mental health issues, but the fact is the world is a place that is full of reasons for mental health issues, right? We talk about war, we talk about political discourse and the sort of polarization that's taking place right now. Climate change is a huge factor, right? So all of COVID obviously is a huge factor. All of these things have led to a dramatically increased mental health situation. On the other side, though, sort of the double-edged sword, technology will also and has been playing a really instrumental role in increasing access. And a lot of what we think about is there's like 3 main problems right now. You have stigma, so people are not willing to raise their hand and say, I need help. 2 is access, so once they do raise their hand, there just aren't enough providers out there. There's nowhere close. That stat, that billion people, 70% are not getting care today. That's 700 million people that have a diagnosed mental health condition that aren't getting care. A huge part of that is because of access. And then finally, it's affordability, right? So if you can get access, can you actually afford to pay for it? And those are the 3 problems that we're really trying to help solve in the world.
Absolutely. And I think the issue of stigmatism actually hits home for me because, I've had mental health issues in the past. As a journalist, I've tried to use my platform as limited as it is to discuss those issues and share those issues to show that you're not alone. Talking helps, and stigma shouldn't be an issue anymore, but it is. To talk personally and anecdotally for a minute, my triggers are work. So you brought up COVID there, and I think COVID.
I hope I'm not triggering you right now.
No, not at all. But COVID has played an added factor for, I think, many people. Many people here might agree, might not agree. But in terms of their workplace habits and how work makes them feel about themselves and their mental health, I have a statistic here. Again, following COVID, there was an increase of 25% of instances where people just, had anxiety or other kind of mental issues going back to work. What trends have you seen as a CEO, for example, what trends are you seeing in the workplace now in terms of tackling mental health issues?
Well, first of all, as a leader of people, whether it be at a company or any institution, right?
Yeah.
It could be universities, it could be governments. It's something that we clearly have to pay attention to. When you're talking about 30, 40% of your population having a need, and then the system of care not being there to support them, it becomes a business continuity issue, right? Or it becomes a societal issue that we've got to figure out how to focus on it. We ran a survey earlier this year, our workforce attitude survey, and we see that greater than 60% of the workforce is missing at least a day of work every year due to mental health issues. And a full half of those are missing more than a week per year. Mm-hmm. So when you think about the cost to the organization of people missing days of work, you think about the downstream healthcare costs. We know that people that have a mental health issue cost the healthcare system 2.5 times what somebody who doesn't have a mental health issue costs. The estimate is that's $1 trillion a year in healthcare spend globally due to mental health issues. So this is not only important from an individual standpoint, because most of us have dealt with mental health issues throughout our life, but it's also a huge cost that we have to be thinking about. And as a leader, what I'm seeing is that companies are increasingly realizing that they have to focus on it. There's a study done this week, actually, Willis Towers Watson, that showed that 2/3 of companies have mental health as one of their top 3 issues that they're focusing on over the coming years. And so we're starting to see it. We're starting to see the recognition that this is a really important issue.
Headspace then, I think I read that you have things like mind days, for example.
Yeah.
What examples or what concrete ideas are you putting in place in your kind of sphere of influence within the company? I don't know whether you can share a few ideas.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few things. One is breaks.
Yeah.
Mindful breaks. We actually, there are macro breaks, we call them meso breaks, and then there are micro breaks. Right? The macro breaks are things like mind days. Literal days, we have 2 per month. So every other Friday, that we just give the team off to recover, right?
Yeah.
And studies have shown, there's a great one done with Microsoft in Japan, studies have shown that these shorter work weeks, these 4-day work weeks, actually increases productivity. And part of it is that people can be more productive in the time they're working if they have more recovery time. 2, these other breaks are ensuring that the meso breaks and the micro breaks are throughout the day, blocking calendar time for recovery. Half hours here and there that you're just giving yourself recovery time. So you're not constantly having to think. The micro breaks are literally the 1-minute meditation or breathing exercise in between meetings. Instead of going back to back, stand up, walk around, get a glass of water, take a few deep breaths. 20% increase in brain capability, capacity, if you just take that 1-minute break between meetings.
That's a great segue, actually, into kind of the work of Headspace. So obviously, you focus on meditation and other things. I wonder if anyone here do you use Headspace, or show of hands? So it's hard to see, but probably about half the audience uses it. Another one there, I can't really hear, sorry, from the stage, but there are Calms, sorry, yeah, there are a variety of apps, sorry. Talk to us a little bit about Headspace then, for people in the audience that aren't aware of it, and how to use it, and how the company has kind of evolved up till today.
So the concept of Headspace is it's really like brushing your brain, right? The notion is that using meditation to develop mindfulness is preventative in nature. It allows you to be able to manage the ups and downs. Just I talked about we haven't evolved to manage all of this information coming in. Building a mindfulness practice allows you to manage all of that information in a much more effective way. So, we don't brush our teeth because we have a tooth problem today. We brush our teeth because we're trying to prevent tooth problems down the road. Developing a meditation and mindfulness practice is brushing our brain. It allows us to prevent brain problems down the road, and that's where Headspace started. We realized that the prevention is critically important if we're going to really change the way the population accesses mental health, because you've got to keep people out of the system as a starting point. But then there are a lot of people that need more care, right? So show of hands, how many people have been to a therapist, if you're willing to share?
So quite a large number.
How many people have had trouble getting access to a therapist at some point? Raise your hands. This is what we see, right? So probably half the audience have been to a therapist, probably half of them have had trouble finding a therapist. We realized that at the moment of greatest need, we needed to support them. So we merged with a company called Ginger. Some of you in the United States might have heard of it, but Ginger really pioneered on-demand mental health.
For people from Europe, for example, me, what is Ginger? Contextualize it for us.
Ginger is an on-demand mental health system that 24/7 provides access to behavioral health coaching, therapy, and psychiatry. So any time of day or night, you can get access to live care through either chat-based modalities or video-based therapy and psychiatry. We brought these two companies together, the mindfulness and meditation prevention side with the care side, because we want to create a continuous mental health journey. And, what we actually recently announced this morning was that unified experience. So that experience that we can bring somebody in, we can do very quick assessment and understand where are they in that journey. Most people are still in the subclinical side, the preventative side. Make sure that they can build a prevention practice. But then for those who need more, we're there to provide them exactly the level of care they need. And like this is, if you were to design the mental health system from scratch, our vision is this is how you would design it. And we're trying to create a platform so that we can take care of the stigma problem through a brand like Headspace where people are excited to experience the access problem with real-time 24/7 access to care, and then the cost problem. We're trying to bend the cost curve with technology that allows us to scale this much more effectively.
So would you say that the end goal of that is to, I guess, democratize healthcare in a way to reduce cost? That might work in the US, but there's maybe a disconnect with Europe because there's so many different healthcare systems. So for example, I'm from the UK. The NHS is point of service kind of healthcare provider, free at the point of need. I waited, or I had to wait 5 months for therapy. I didn't get it in the end, but will this work everywhere in the world, or is it, at the minute, is it more focused towards the US market?
Everywhere that we help people in 190 countries. The NHS is actually a client.
Okay.
Everywhere I've gone, the situation's the same. Stigma, access, cost.
Absolutely.
It doesn't. The healthcare systems around the world are not designed for the 40% of the population that has a need. So your payers might be different. You might have more private insurance somewhere. You might have more public insurance somewhere. But the problems are the same. You don't have enough access, and you don't have people thinking about their mental health early enough. And you have some countries where it's far more stigmatized than others, where there's even less willingness to admit that you have a mental health problem. That's cultural in a lot of ways. So some of the very specifics, like of how you integrate, would change, but the need's the same. I mean, there aren't enough providers. There are too many people with a need, and if you don't solve for it, all of the downstream effects are pretty devastating.
Absolutely. I was speaking to a few people at Web Summit this week, and they were giving me their perspective from their home countries. And you're right, it's a cultural thing as well. Some countries are experience more stigma when it comes to mental health than others. Maybe some are more understanding of issues than another country, for example. Headspace is one thing. Apps like Calms and Headspace are one thing. I'm going to pivot now, if I can, to other kind of technology that might be making more of a difference. So I'm kind of thinking AI here. And there's lots of case studies of applications, good applications for AI. I have a few here. So motion sensors that pick up behavioral signs, for example. Chatbots. I think I read something called Wobot that's able to pick up emotionally. It's an emotionally intelligent chatbot that picks up on signs. Is this something that is going to, complement the work of Headspace, or is it in itself? I've seen it build as the future of mental health care. How do you see it all fitting together in one kind of ecosystem?
It's already complementing what we're doing. So I'll give you a few examples of how we use it today. One is we predict both where somebody should be, as well as the kind of content that's going to be most successful using AI. And we're actually at the point where our AI is more predictive of engagement in content than our actual live providers. So our therapists, our coaches will predict a piece of content that somebody should use. Our AI will predict it. The AI wins, right? We use AI to power our care providers. There's only so much information a care provider can take in and remember and use effectively. But our AI can do things like look at 3 months of someone's care journey and pick up on changes over time and use that to predict what the next best pathway would look like. If you think about, for example, our behavioral health coaches that are using text-based modalities, we're actually providing them our recommended responses that they can then use to respond to members using AI. So there's a lot of things that we're doing already to sort of power more scalable care, more cost-effective care, kind of superpowering our providers so that the quality stays at a certain level or increases over time, which is what we've seen. Our quality as we've scaled has actually gone up based on use of these technologies. Now, where this goes, I think chatbots are very interesting. The state of the art today, it's tricky in mental health because emotional resonance is so important. And the minute that a chatbot responds with something that isn't emotionally attached, you kind of lose interest. I mean, my wife tells me, "You seem emotionally distanced," right? Like, so and I'm not a chatbot. There's work to be done. OpenAI and things like that. I mean, the state of the art has gotten incredibly more sophisticated in the last 18 months. But it's still not yet really emotionally resonant, and that's going to take time.
I think you hit the nail on the head there as well, that I think technology can only take you so far. And with something like mental health, it does take that emotional connection with someone. I know from my own experience, the kind of thing that broke the ice was me talking about it for the first time.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm a journalist, I've written about it, I've spoken to colleagues about it. Journalism, believe it or not, is a very high-stress career. And things like this, sitting on a panel in front of 800 people is nerve-wracking. It's anxiety-inducing. I hope I'm doing all right so far. But you do need that emotional connection. So what more can, say, for example, we're using Headspace in workplace environments, what more can colleagues or employees of companies, or employers, do to help their kind of employees with their mental health journeys?
Well, I mean, I'll start with my own journey. I sold a company to LinkedIn in 2014, and it was, I'm a CEO in a much bigger company all of a sudden. So that was anxiety provoking. I had a little bit of imposter syndrome as part of that.
Yeah.
I had a baby at the same time. So I had my third daughter, and I wasn't sleeping very well. And so I was anxious. I mean, it was like the first time in my life I really felt anxiety. And Jeff Weiner, the then CEO of LinkedIn, brought the founder of Headspace in to talk to the company about Headspace and about mindfulness and meditation. And I remember downloading the app right in that session because it was like, this sounds like something I need. And it was life-changing for me. 3 weeks of meditation, and I was sitting in a meeting, and something that would have triggered me, it just clicked. It didn't trigger me. I noted it. I took the information in, but I just let it go without responding to it. And for the first time, I realized just how powerful the concept of mindfulness can be. So back to your specific question, the fact that Jeff brought Andy in to talk about mindfulness and meditation literally changed my life as an employee, right? Made me a better dad, made me a better employee, made me a better partner to my wife. So talking about it is step one, right? Normalizing this, as a leader, making it something that people can talk about. To your point, like the minute you started talking about it, you started to feel better, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
2 is training. It's hard for leaders to have conversations if they're afraid of the answer. So in other words, if you talk to somebody and they say, I'm actually quite depressed, I've thought about suicide.
Yeah.
If you don't have some mental health first aid training, if you don't actually know how to respond to that, that's a scary situation. So what happens is people don't want to talk about it.
No.
So bringing training into an organization can be incredibly helpful. And then the final thing, back to access, employees are telling employers right now that their health plans aren't working, that the NHS isn't working, because they're looking for a therapist, just like half the people in this audience, and they can't find somebody that either they can afford or that's available. So bringing solutions in to make sure that you have something for those who are raising their hand, it's a critical part of changing the landscape.
Absolutely. We're running out of time, I'm afraid. I would love to continue this conversation. It's an ongoing one. I encourage everyone to have that conversation with whoever it is that you trust, or your partners, your family. Do it. If you are struggling, do it. The old mantra, it's okay not to be okay, it still stands. And Russell, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, same. Thank you.